Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra. In the twilight of ancient Egypt's golden era, beneath the shadow of the Nile's eternal flow, the court of Alexandria buzzed with intrigue. Prosperity had long reigned, but the scrolls foretold a change on upheaval, delivered by royal blood and magic, by love and ruin, by ghosts of the dead and cunning of the living. This is the tale of Cleopatra, destined queen and tragic heroine, whose choices would teach the world about power, pride, and the path of the heart. Terrified, she argued firmly. Magic used to harm dishonors the gods, and they repented, or so they said. Thus, a lesson grew in her. Power is sacred. It demands wisdom to wield it well. Under the opulent ceilings of the royal palace, Queen Cleopatra Philippata was born on a star-bright night. She demanded to coral Egypt. Their advisors, drawn by intrigue, split allegiance. Soon, the palace turned toward civil war. The populace murmured for the true queen. Cleopatra returned, not by force, but by invitation. Defiant priests, common folk, even soldiers welcomed her. Ptolemy could not rival her genius, nor unity. She became Queen of Egypt. She sent envoys to Rome, the city of rising might, and met the charismatic general Julius Caesar in Alexandria's grand library. Her charm captured him, but not only that. They held tournaments of intellect and debates on governance. The oracles named her unravel, the soul of Bastet, goddess of protection. Even as a toddler, she showed a fiery intellect and charm that could bend tyrants. Under their partnership, great Alexandria flourished. Roads and libraries soared. Temples where everyday folk learned and thrived. Cleopatra further deployed her knowledge of herbal magic to heal the sick. Her father, Ptolemy XII, recognized her brilliance and devoted himself to her education. She offered to lead a ritual that would bind the undead to their crypts for a price. Cloaked in gold, Cleopatra pressed a sun-disk talisman to her breast, whispering to the gods, drawing the attention of the mummies. Ancient cat guardians enchanted emerged to aid her. War raged in crypt passageways. The priests balked how to undo what they had wrought. The dagger flashed, but Eleni, her loyal maid, dove forward and took the wound. But the mummies, awakened too soon, were uncontrollable. They destroyed oasis, consumed souls, brought pestilence. He scorched part of the Nile and raised the dead beyond the desert. Cleopatra, remembering the temple of Thoth, called upon Imhotep to guide her toward purification rituals. Cleopatra wept for Eleni's bravery. She ordered justice, yet tempered with mercy. Ptolemy would be exiled, not executed. At 12, she spoke Greek, Egyptian, and learned rhetoric, philosophy, magic. In one final tragic act, he opened a seal, releasing a pheromone, the greatest and most malevolent of all, Setik, the terrible. Magic clashed, and mummified pharaohs responded to their ancient masters. The earth trembled. She learned that true rulership stems from serving the land and its people, not dominating them. In the desert they journeyed to Siwa, the oracle's oasis, where voices spoke of a ruler who would shape the world and bear the burden of consequence. Yet his favor stirred jealous whispers in the court. Within the cold corridors lurked ambition. One night, as a young Cleopatra, 10, sneaked into the temple of Thoth. She overheard two priests debating the use of dark arts to bind souls. By age 18, her father had died, and Cleopatra stood beside her brother, Ptolemy XIII, minimally in age and doubtful in judgment. During this crisis, Cleopatra met her first mentor, Imhotep, the sage, who taught her about the balance of the world, the cycle of Mat and Is. When Ptolemy's forces ambushed her near the palace, Cleopatra escaped in a hidden carriage, guided safely by Imhotep and faithful soldiers. In her absence, Ptolemy had the palace to himself, but his reign wavered. Legitimacy lies in service and unity more than in birthright or brute force. As sovereign, Cleopatra reached beyond Egypt's borders. Yet, her brother, Ptolemy, alarmed by her ascent, summoned an assassin. Within a month, Caesar and Cleopatra became allies politically and personally. Then came ominous rumors. Undead mummies rose from crypts beyond the Nile, wandering border villages, draining vitality. Scales tipped from order to chaos. In the desert, priests of Set performed forbidden rites, believing they could resurrect champions of old pharaohs of brutal power. Caesar's legions marched east, but swords failed before wooden mummies encased in cursed cloth. Under a trench of hieroglyphs, priests faced off. the necromancers who disturbed the dead and the queen's own priests. Imhotep drew blade and champed. Cleopatra, veil of mist in hand, invoked the blessing of Isis and Ra in scorching sands. Cleopatra, Caesar, and Imhotep reached the main tomb. When mummies reached Cleopatra, she stood firm, forging a deal not by sword, but by sacred words. Return to sleep, leave this waking world, and await judgment in Aru. Let Egypt be at peace. Slowly, under her authority, the mummies ceased their advance, turning to dust. The crypt closed, sealed by magic and oath. But at the apex of triumph, Imhotep fell, seduced by Set's whispering shadows. He towered, tombed centuries ago for cruelty now awakened again. Seeing Setek's devastation, Cleopatra no longer trusted Caesar's tactics. She turned to ancient prophecy. In the lost temple of Seshat lay the Eye of Horus, artifact potent enough to imprison any dark soul. At great personal cost, one must sacrifice their own breath. There she found the eye, shimmering in moonlight. Caesar's legion and Egyptian armaments marched inland. Cleopatra traveled ahead, alone, into the ruined temple. Suddenly, Setek appeared. "Queen of fleeting sands, give me the artifact," he roared. The Eye of Horus glowed, and Setek staggered, drawn forward as if by invisible chains. Then, the walls collapsed, a thunderous roar, and Setek vanished imprisoned in the void. "Power belongs to people, not tyrants," she answered. A duel of magic and will ensued. Sand turned to glass under her feet as she chanted for Mat. He lashed out, fire shadows smashing columns. She began rebuilding, healing, and instituting magical laws against necromancy. Under her governance, Egypt became benevolent and just. She allied with Mark Antony, who admired her magic and leadership, but she was wary of his ambition. "He loves me," she said, "but he loves power more." Antony had asked druidic necromancers to leverage ancestral spirits, dangerous, forbidden. At her last breath, Cleopatra seized the artifact, closed her eyes, and tightened her lips. Antony's forces were routed. He fled to her in Alexandria, dying in her arms. They warned. Roman chains would break Egypt's soul. She penned one final message and wept. The sword had fallen on the Ides of March 1544 BCE. Rome demanded surrender. Cleopatra refused, believing fate could yet bend. Better to give empire silence than to see her spirit buried. But this story teaches the principle: to bind one's fate to another nation is a fragile gamble. Caesar wept, but the ritual worked. Setek's soul sealed, Caesar marched to conquer farther east. Cleopatra went with him. At Carthage, she lived there briefly as Queen of Egypt and Rome. But the people whispered that her spirit endured. In libraries, in magic laws, in Nile's blood her life was not lost. In her grip, the Eye of Horus glinted. Setek's darkness had been bound, Egypt's clarity preserved. Mummy cults in the south emerged once more, seduced by wartime magic. Cleopatra collapsed. Guards found her unconscious. Sacrifice is the greatest gift of all. By giving herself, Cleopatra preserved Egypt's soul, of love and duty, of magic used for healing, and darkness undone by light. Egypt's children learn still. The greatest power lies not in ruling the world, but in ruling oneself. Cleopatra returned to Alexandria in victory, but weak of breath. She and Caesar married in secret, fearing Rome's wrath. But jealous Senator Zahn news of Caesar's ties to an Eastern queen fomented unrest. Then came news. Caesar stabbed in the Senate. Cleopatra, across the sea, heard the echo great. Alexandria remained a beacon of thought and law. Without Caesar, Cleopatra sought new support. War brewed with Rome itself. Cleopatra built fleets, and Antony amassed his legions in Egypt. But storms, a gift perhaps from Caesar, wrecked their ships. A decisive battle loomed near Actium. Cleopatra hesitated to commit her fleet, sensing betrayal. Ultimately, Cleopatra withdrew her fleet, an act seen as desertion. With Antony's death, she faced Rome's greatest general, Octavian Caesar. In Alexandria, refugees gathered. Cleopatra consulted priests one last time. "I hold Egypt's breath in my hands." She arranged a grand farewell. Lotus petals, oracles, priests, commoners alike gathered at the palace gardens, overlooking the Nile. There she spoke. "I loved my land more than life. Let this day sun flare spark hope beyond fear." And with that she touched her breast, were laid to asp vipers encased in sacred potion. They struck. A calm passed over her face. Priests rushed into late. She lay like a queen asleep. Moral: sometimes the greatest act of power is letting go. With Cleopatra's passing on August 12, 30 BCE, Rome took Egypt as a province. Young girls studied her speeches. Priests taught youth about balance, compassion, caution with magic. Rome's poets wrote of her tears and brilliance. The moral echoes through time. 1. True leadership serves the land and people. Power is not the goal. It's a responsibility. 2. Ambition must be tempered by wisdom, magic, knowledge, charisma, all gifts that can corrupt or heal, depending on one's heart. 3. Sometimes, and so, beneath eternal stars, by the flowing Nile, her memory remained a tale of beauty and terror.